This is the Porsche Cayenne Electric, and it's going to be absolutely crucial to the future, or not future, of Porsche EVs. And if you want to know why, then keep watching. The new Cayenne Electric is Porsche's most important EV since the Taycan, and it's coming at an unpredictable time for the company, which admits that it's seen a large drop in the demand for electric cars. In fact, the upcoming large SUV that's set to slot in above the Cayenne is now going to be launched as a petrol and a plug-in hybrid, not as an EV as was originally planned. So where does that leave the Cayenne Electric? Because initially we thought the introduction of this car meant that the Cayenne was going to go to an all-electric nameplate. There wouldn't be any more petrol or hybrid versions, but Porsche has recently said that it's committed to petrol and hybrid versions of the Cayenne going well into the 2030s, and that'll ideally run alongside these electric models. A little bit confusing, but hopefully you're still following. Now though, we have got this in the studio. It's the Cayenne Electric, and it's going to go on sale in 2026 with a starting price of around £83,000, which isn't that much more than an entry-level petrol Cayenne. And the really interesting thing is that the turbo version is going to cost from about £131,000, which is over £10,000 less than a turbo e-hybrid, and it's quicker. Honestly, the turbo figures are a little bit silly. 1,140 brake horsepower, 1,106 pounds-foot of torque, 0 to 62 miles an hour in 2.5 seconds, and 0 to 124 miles an hour in 7.4. It's even got direct oil cooling on the rear motor in order to keep those numbers repeatable over and over and over again. You can launch it 8 times before you start to see a drop-off in the power, or at least that's what Porsche claims. However, there is a caveat to those numbers, because in normal driving, it's capped at 845 brake horsepower, which is still quite a lot, but it's not 1,140. And you only get that when the car is in its full launch control mode. And I can't help but think that Porsche knows that at some point this car is going to be drag raced mercilessly by a man from Birmingham, and he's going to put it on his YouTube channel, and the car will do very, very well indeed. But for most people, the 845 I think will be absolutely fine. The regular Cayenne Electric, which like the turbo is also all-wheel drive, delivers launch and standard power outputs that are far closer together. With the launch control activated, it's 436 brake horsepower, whereas otherwise it's 402. Good luck if you ever have to push this thing, because the Cayenne Electric Turbo weighs in at over 2.6 tons, which is very, very heavy, but then that's pretty much par for the course with luxury electric SUVs, so I'm not going to criticize them too much for that. And actually, the Cayenne Electric has some very clever tricks up its sleeve when it comes to stopping and turning. Porsche is very keen to point out that the Cayenne Electric can reach up to Formula E levels of recuperation when braking, namely 600 kilowatts, and that in everyday life, 97% of all braking operations can be handled by the motors. And for the remaining 3% of the time, Porsche has you covered, because there's optional carbon ceramic brakes on the Cayenne Electric Turbo, and they are huge. 10 piston calipers, 440mm disc at the front. That's overkill, but it's glorious. The Cayenne Electric also gets adaptive air suspension with Porsche Active Suspension Management as standard on both models, plus the turbo features Porsche Torque Vectoring Plus on the limited slip rear differential. Rear axle steering is also available on both models, as is Porsche Active Ride for the first time on an SUV. We've seen Porsche's Active Ride technology before on the Taycan, and what it essentially does is jettison the anti-roll bars, and instead it replaces them with an active damper on all 4 corners of the car. And within that active damper, there's an electric motor, and that helps counteract the forces of pitch and roll while the car is maneuvering. And Porsche actually refers to that as helicopter mode, because when you accelerate, for example, you think you'd be pushed back in your seat, but actually you still are, but the car is pitched forwards, and then when you're braking, the car pitches itself backwards a little bit. It's very clever tech, it works in the Taycan, so there's no real reason why it wouldn't work in the Cayenne Electric.
It won't come as any surprise, but the Cayenne Electric is even larger than the petrol Cayenne. At 4,895mm, it's 55mm longer, with much of that coming in the wheelbase, which gains a whole 130mm, giving much more rear legroom. Meanwhile, the boot is 781 litres seats in place and 1,588 litres seats folded down. Plus, you've also got the 90-litre frunk up front.
As for the looks, the good news is the Cayenne Electric and the Cayenne Petrol are distinguishable. They are not carbon copies. For what it's worth, I think the rear of the car looks better than the front, but I'm going to point out some of the design details that you can tell the difference between the two cars anyway. So we've got these super slim LED headlights. You can get HD LED headlights as an option. There's the Turbonite colouring on the badge. Everything seems to have Turbonite now because it was on the Turbo S 911 that we reviewed recently. There's also an example of the active aero down here. Those can open and close. And then come around the side, 22-inch alloy wheels, more Turbonite colouring. And I mean, I've got to say, how small do they look for 22-inch wheels? That is insane. Open the door, you can see that it's frameless, which is a nice touch, and also the side skirts, 3D style side skirts. Come round the back, and we've got the active rear spoiler. Below that, there's the full width LED light bar with the Porsche lettering in the middle, and then my favorite bit, more active aero, it's these aero blades which pop out, and they've got the coordinates to the wind tunnel at Weissach engraved along the bottom. Not entirely sure why, but it's a nice detail nonetheless. In terms of customization, there's 13 different standard exterior shades that you can choose from. There's also 9 different alloy wheel designs and 12 interior options that you can go with too. There's a huge amount that you can choose, but also there's a customization program separate to that. So essentially, the world is your oyster when it comes to making the Cayenne Electric your own. Never mind the outside of the car, the interior of the new Cayenne Electric is pretty spectacular. There's a huge amount of screens on display, which is pretty normal for a lot of new cars, but these screens are actually extra nice. We've got the main flow display in the middle, which is a curved screen, looks very cool, and that integrates into the optional 14.9-inch passenger display and the standard 14.25-inch digital dashboard display. There's a lot of new features to talk about with the Cayenne Electric's interior, and one of the most interesting ones is the Porsche moods that you can choose from. So on the main screen here, we've got dynamic, journey, urban, relaxation, focused, entertainment, and if you scroll through them, like I'm doing now, the ambient lighting, the air conditioning, the sounds, even the seats will change depending on what mood you want. So I'm in dynamic now, but let's press relaxation. And yeah, lighting goes greeny blue and everything goes a lot more zen. I'd love to see what this is like when you're stuck in traffic on the M25 and you've got screaming children in the back. But for now, I feel pretty relaxed.
Adding to the cabin tech is a head-up display with augmented reality, meaning the display you see in front of you is the equivalent to looking at an 87-inch TV that's positioned 10 meters away.
I think what's really interesting with this interior is that Porsche already had a benchmark cabin design. It was pretty much one of the best that you could buy, but they've ripped it all up to some degree. And they've started again. I mean, the digital dash display is pretty similar to what you see on the Taycan, but this central screen, the flow screen, it's a really impressive thing to look at and to use. The screen itself is super responsive, graphics are great, functionality is obviously very, very high-end. And then, I mean, I'm looking at the screen now with the model of the car on it, and it's the same color as this car is. And the graphics and the detail, if we go through the drive modes and we put it in off-road mode, you can see the tread on the tires and little bits of dirt and gravel collecting in the tread. It's a small detail, but it makes a difference when you're sitting here. Something else I've noticed in here, which is a very useful feature, is this pad here. They call it the Ferry pad, after Ferry Porsche, obviously. And it allows you to use the infotainment screen and actually rest your wrist on it, which is super handy because usually you've got your hand at a bit of an unnatural angle and it's difficult to press the screen and get the icons accurately. So that's a really good feature. And then speaking of this central infotainment screen, the CarPlay integration is excellent because half of the screen CarPlay and the bottom half still shortcuts to the widgets that you can set on the main Porsche infotainment system. So you can have your moods, you can have your battery, temperature, trip computer, all of that. You don't have to choose between having the CarPlay and the rest of the widgets. So you can quickly shortcut to lots of different items. Also, that passenger information display, optional but probably worth it because it is one of the clearest passenger information displays that I have seen. And you can see that now by the YouTube video that's playing, the Car Magazine Porsche 911 Turbo S review in all its 4K glory. It looks superb. I can see it now because I'm in park on the gear lever, but when I put it in drive, I won't be able to see it. Only the passenger will, but you can have that screen on the center screen when the car is parked as well. A couple of other bits to mention. We've got heated panels, not just heated seats in this car. That's very 21st century. So we've got heated panels. So there's paneling that is heated there, paneling that's heated here as well. And then the roof, you can change how opaque it is, and it also opens up as well. Whereas in the Taycan, you can change how opaque it is, but it doesn't open, it's completely fixed. Gotta say that the cabin in this Cayenne Electric is very, very impressive. It feels like the real deal.
The Cayenne Electric gets a predictably humongous 113 kilowatt-hour battery. In the regular car, that's good for a claimed 399 miles, with the turbo only slightly behind on 387 miles. 800-volt technology allows the Cayenne Electric to charge at up to 400 kilowatts from a suitable DC charger, meaning a 10 to 80% charge should, in theory, be achievable in less than 16 minutes. What's more, the Cayenne Electric is the first Porsche ever to be available with optional wireless charging, whereby the car can simply be parked over a charging pad and topped up at a rate of up to 11 kilowatts. The system will likely cost around £5,000 and can be spec'd on all UK Cayenne Electrics.
On first impressions, the Cayenne Electric, whether it's the regular model or the turbo, it looks like it has everything. It's got space, pace, technology. It's not even a bad-looking car. But the big question is whether the Cayenne Electric will do for Porsche what the regular petrol Cayenne did around 20 years ago and transform the fortunes of the company, because that's what this one needs to do for Porsche's EV brand, because at the moment, it's very much in the balance. And if this car doesn't work as an EV for Porsche, then you've got to ask the question, will any car work as a Porsche EV? Because this, it should be about as good as it gets.